to my fellow freedom lovers, sovereign thinkers. Thank you for tuning in to LL3 Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful realm of planet Earth. And today's date is Thursday, September 30th, 2021. Ooh, October is just a day away in what parts of the world. Wow, man. That's what I say. Time flies. We know that for sure. Yeah, I was watching the video yesterday. I was listening to the reports from, once again, New York Governor, Captain Ahab herself, Kathy Hercolci. Wow. Now she's saying, God, thank God for the vaccine. The COVID-19 vaccine, to be exact. Yeah, can you explain to me why at least 15,000 people conservatively have died from the shot? My goodness. At some church, and I heard it was in the Williamsburg district of Brooklyn, which is right across the river from Chinatown. If you go across the Williamsburg Bridge, have been in a long, long time. But man, I'm just like listening to her rhetoric. I just started laughing. Pure blasphemy indeed, folks. I think Jesus would toss her into the den of thieves, because that's what she's representing. Very, very blasphemous indeed. Even Bible scholars are probably just smacking their heads once again. Like, who was her idol? Pope Francis? I wouldn't be surprised. Whew, man, talking about globalization 101. Well, speaking of all that, I'm just going to be cutting to the chase right now. That's why I had to make this one brief. I'm not going to go ranting on her, because we know who she represents. It's self-explanatory. Well, for COVID, God created great things that could fight certain infections, including the synthetic ones. And this one here came from the Epoch Times. Before I narrate this, the title is actually the episode 1396. This is entitled The Critical Importance of Vitamin D and Mortgage Edition of Constitutional Overreach. I'll be giving my input, my intake after I narrate these. And it's good to know, because Mother Nature and God is a lot more complex than what you and I know. I don't care what your belief system is. Okay, I can explain this under a universal cosmos. And even the founding fathers looked at that as the creator. They had their different creeds, but they had a common element. So, without further ado, this was here, the critical importance of vitamin D. Make sure you know the signs of vitamin D deficiency. This is written by Joseph McCullough. Came out today. As it reads here, the importance of maintaining optimal levels of vitamin D can't be overstated. Vitamin D regulates the expression of hundreds of genes and is integral to biological functions that affect every bodily system. Vitamin D insufficiency or deficiency can trigger several generalized symptoms that you may have associated with our health conditions. It's also called the sunshine vitamin, since your skin makes vitamin D when exposed to the ultraviolet light from the sun. Remember some of those douchebags out there want to close the beaches because of COVID? Remember that? Yeah. Think about it, folks. Including the salt water, okay? Think about that. It's how acidine these bobbleheaded politicians are. Doesn't matter where you're at and what their party is. It is totally ludicrous what they have done. I'll continue on here. Vitamin D performs many functions within the body, including maintaining adequate levels of calcium and phosphate, essential for normal bone mineralization. It helps reduce inflammation, which is necessary for the modulation of cell growth and immune function. Vitamin D also affects genes that help regulate cell differentiation and apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. The main indicator of your vitamin D level is 500 hydro Z vitamin D or 250 HD data collected from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey in 2005 to 2006 showed a deficiency prevalence of 41.6% in the United States population. However, as discussed later in this article, today as many as 80% of people may be deficient in vitamin D. It is important to note that how the measurement of insufficiency and deficiency is defined depends on serum concentrations used. Some researchers use a level of 20 nanograms per milliliter or 50 nanomoles per liter. The NGML is used most frequently in the United States, and NML is a standard in Europe. However, Grassroots Health Nutrient Research Institute recommends vitamin D serum concentrates levels from 40 ngmls to 60 nanograms. It looks like nanograms of milliliters per milliliter, or 100 namoles per liter to 150 namol per liter. At this level, the number of people who are likely deficient in vitamin D would also be significantly higher. Signs of deficiency. It is essential to maintain healthy levels of vitamin D to help reduce the risk of viral and bacterial illness during cold and flu season when respiratory illness are prevalent. Or if you're immune compromised and want to build your natural defenses against other infections, a blood test is the best way to determine your vitamin D levels. But here are some symptoms that may indicate your levels are low. Aching muscles. Nearly half of all adults are affected by muscle pains. Researchers believe most of those adults are deficient in vitamin D. Some studies have suggested that nerves have vitamin D receptors that affect the perception of pain. And in one animal study, research demonstrated a vitamin D deficient diet can induce deep muscle hypersensitivity that was not connected to low levels of calcium. Painful bones. Vitamin D regulated the levels of calcium in your body necessary to protect bone health. Vitamin D deficiency can cause your bones to soften, called osteomalacia. This may be a precursor to osteoporosis. Fatigue. It is a common symptom of a variety of different health conditions, including sleep deprivation. Researchers have found that supplementing cancer patients suffering from fatigue with vitamin D can improve their symptoms. In one study using 174 adults with fatigue and stable medical conditions, the researchers found 77.2% were deficient in vitamin D. After normalizing their level, the fatigue symptoms improved significantly. Reduced muscle performance. Vitamin D deficiency as in common in athletes as in others. Vitamin D is crucial for muscle development, strength, and performance. Older adults taking a vitamin D supplement have reduced the risk of falls and improved muscle performance. Correction through oral supplementation or sensible sun exposure may reduce symptoms of stress fractures, musculoskeletal pain, and frequent illness. Vitamin D has also direct effect on muscle performance. In one paper from the Journal of American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, the author wrote, higher serum levels of vitamin D are associated with the reduced injury rates and improved sports performance. In a subset of the population, vitamin D appears to play a role in muscle strength, injury prevention, and sports performance. Brain health. Vitamin D is also essential for your brain health. Symptoms of deficiency can include dementia caused by increase of soluble and insoluble beta amyloid, a factor in Alzheimer's disease. Research has also found an association with depression that may be associated with the function of vitamin D buffering the higher levels of calcium in the brain. Vitamin D deficiency in pregnant women can increase the risk of autism and schizophrenic-like disorders in the baby. One study of people with fibromyalgia found in vitamin D deficiency was more common in those who had anxiety and depression. Another looked at vitamin D deficiency in obese subjects and found relationship between low levels of vitamin D and depression. Poor sleep. The mechanism linking vitamin D and poor sleep quality hasn't been identified, but research had found people with low levels of vitamin D have poor quality sleep and a higher risk of sleep disorders. Sweaty head. Excessive sweating, especially on your head, or change in your pattern of sweating can indicate a vitamin D deficiency. Hair loss. Vitamin D is crucial to the proliferation of keratinocytes and plays an important role in your hair cycle. The vitamin D receptor appears to play a role in the anagen phase of hair growth, leading researchers to conclude that treatments that upregulate the vitamin D receptor may be successful in treating their hair disorders and are a potential area of further study. Slow healing wounds. Chronic wounds are a major public health challenge. In the United States, 2% of the population is affected by chronic wounds and is estimated to account for 5.5% of the cost of health care in the United Kingdom's National Health Service. Vitamin D promotes wound healing and creation of catalytin, a peptide that fights wound infections. Dizziness. Evidence of animal studies suggests that vitamin D is critical in the development of the inner ear, which affects balance and coordination. Analysis of people with vestibular neuritis, characterized by vertigo, showed lower serum vitamin D levels than in people without vestibular neuritis. Heart problems. Clinical studies have shown that vitamin D3 improves circulation, can help improve high blood pressure. In one study, researchers discovered that vitamin D3 has also a significant effect on the endothelial cells that line your cardiovascular system. They found that it helped balance concentrations of nitric oxide and peroxynitrate, which improve endothelial function. Excess weight. How vitamin D affects obesity hasn't been identified. However, data does show that there's a high probability of deficiency in people who are obese. Recurring infections. There have been multiple epidemiological studies that show vitamin D deficiency can increase the risk of severity of infection, particularly in respiratory tract infections. Multiple studies have demonstrated that vitamin D deficiency increases the potential risk for severe disease and mortality, especially in those who are critically ill. Reduced cognitive functions. Data show that vitamin D deficiency increases your risk of dementia twofold and raises your risk of impaired cognitive function. 8% of people with COVID-19 are deficient in vitamin D. Interesting here. Vitamin D plays an important role in the development of severity of many diseases. This is why from the very beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, I suspected that optimizing vitamin D levels would significantly lower the incidence of infection and death in the general population. Since then, mounting evidence has revealed that higher levels of vitamin D may reduce the rate of positive tests, hospitalizations, and mortality related to this infection. One study released in late 2020 assessed the serum 250 HD levels of patients hospitalized with COVID-19 to evaluate the influence it might have on severity of the disease. The researchers found 82.2% of those with COVID-19 were vitamin D deficient, levels lower than 20 nanograms per milliliter. Hopefully I correct that. I'm pretty flawed in those areas, okay, folks? So bear with me. Any scientists out there, if you're going to clarify it, that'd be great. And interestingly, they also found that those who were deficient had greater prevalence of cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, higher iron levels, and longer hospital stays. A second study found similar results for people only tested positive for COVID-19. An other study published in August 2021, the American Journal of Physiology, Endocrinology, and Metabolism data showed that the vitamins metabolites can inhibit replication and expansion of SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. It's important to remember the data showing people who are deficient in vitamin D have a higher risk of severe disease and was available long before the COVID-19 pandemic. So, keep on going here. Added to this, the studies of vitamin D have demonstrated insufficiency and deficiency are associated with a number of health conditions. Vitamins that boost vitamin D3. It's important to take vitamin K2, MK7, and magnesium with your vitamin D3 supplement, both play an important role in your overall health and bioavailability and application of vitamin D in your body. If you're not using magnesium and vitamin K2, you could need nearly 2.5 times more vitamin D. A discovery made by Grassroots Health in D Action Project. In this project, more than 10,000 individuals have provided information, also supplement use, and overall health status to Grassroots Health since they began conducting large-scale population-based nutrient research in 2007. Good grief. That information has led to the recommendation that vitamin D blood levels higher 40 nanograms per milliliter and 60 nanograms per milliliter, 100 nanomoles per liter, or 150 nanomoles per liter are safe, effective, and lower overall disease incidence and health care costs. As reported by Grassroots Health, from their data, 244% more supplemental vitamin D was needed for 50% of the population to achieve the whole 40 nanogram per milliliter, of course, or 100 nanomoles per liter for those not taking supplemental magnesium or vitamin K2, compared to those who usually took both supplemental magnesium and vitamin K2. In practical terms, this means when you take vitamin K2 and magnesium with vitamin D, you are far less vitamin D to achieve a healthy level. That's really cool. So, like I said, Mother Nature or God's a lot more complex than what you and I know. You don't need to listen to someone like Governor Hochul, whatever. Good grief. Man, she's not too bright. And assume that we're all a bunch of morons, right? Good grief. Well, here's the thing about Joseph Mercola. He's been banned a lot of these big tech sites because of his views. All right, and of course you got all the dingbats, the so-called fact-checker peckerheads, and the Snopes buffoons. People try to share that crap with you. It's all like invalid because there's so much information out there, folks. You don't really need them. All you gotta do is a little homework. And that's what I always believed. Every infection has an Achilles heel or a flaw. It can be conquered. And even an individual like myself never took things for granted. I did some good homework on this. And I'm still doing it today on natural remedies to fight COVID and all these other infections. And everyone should take the initiative on doing that. Instead of listening to the idiots, the bobbleheads on TV, which I know for sure there's a big spiritual awakening. People are calling these individuals out. And even the opposition movements, activist groups, are doing the same thing, which is good. We can't be a bunch of lab rats. We all have to take responsibility for our health. Not have the government take care of us on that particular subject. That's enslavement, plain and simple. You want to minimize that the best you can or terminate it completely. We've all been, remember, folks, we've all been swindled one way or the other, including myself, okay? But instead of complaining, you improve yourself and you share it with others. Yeah, so very intriguing indeed, on this on this subject. And you know what? You folks should support Mr. Mercola on this. And it's very good to know these things, because when you learn to be vigilant on your health, you don't need to go to the hospital. Right now, they're like death traps. And I remember I talked about that to all my colleagues before the so-called shutdowns happened. But yeah, definitely, folks, go out there and learn this, better yourselves, and when you do, you'll be very blessed. Okay, well, I'm gonna see what's going on here, but I have a few issues. Okay, good, everything's all up and tuned here, which is awesome. And we're gonna do one more here. It is about mortgages. Yeah, by the 10th Amendment Center, came out today. Constitutional overreach has real-world consequences. Mortgage edition is by Harry. And it says here, a lot of people view unconstitutional federal actions as a mere abstraction. They see it as a political issue or perhaps legal mumbo-jumbo. But federal reach has a real-world impact on everyday people. For instance, the Federal Reserve, along with unconstitutional quasi-government entities, are helping corporate real estate investors evict poor people from mobile home parks. NPR highlighted the growing number of mobile home park evictions, according to the report. Real estate investors continue to buy mobile home parks across the U.S. so they can raise lot rents along with fees and evict residents who can't pay. As the report explains, the government makes this scheme possible with SA financing through agencies such as Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Here's how it works in a nutshell. A company raises rates and fees in a park. That makes the park more valuable, so they can borrow more money against it. And, it kind of like when you refi your house, get cash out of the deal, they pull out, say, $3 million, and they use that to go buy another mobile home park. And they do that again and again. It's the cascade of borrowed money. And often these loans are backed by the U.S. government. They provide very, very low-cost debt for these investors to get enough cash out to go buy additional parks. The loans have super cheap interest rates because they're guaranteed by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. The government-backed entities at the heart of the U.S. mortgage market. NPR gets part of the story right. In fact, it's pretty impressive that they didn't just pin the blame on greedy capitalists. Nevertheless, the story completely misses the biggest player in the game, the Federal Reserve. NPR assets that interest rates are low because the government backs the loans. That's certainly part of the equation, but it's a central bank that pushes interest rates to artificially low levels. And the Fed also make it possible to these quasi-government agencies to continue to buy loans, though it's quantitative easing program. Freddie Mae and Freddie Mac don't make the actual loans. Private banks do that. The bank sells the mortgage on the secondary market. That's where Freddie and Fannie step in. These government-backed enterprises buy mortgages and package them into a mortgage-backed security, or MBS. As Investopedia explains, as MBS represents an interest in the pool of mortgages, like bonds, as MBS makes coupon payment to investors. Buying and selling mortgages in the secondary market, banks also shed the risk inherent in lending money. When Fannie and Freddie buy a mortgage, they also buy the risk of non-payment. Securitizing the risk and selling mortgage-backed securities dilute the risk further. With multiple mortgages bundled together into more security, one or two defaults won't have much impact on the MBS. But as we saw in 2007 when the entire housing market crashes, things snowball quickly. Enter the Federal Reserve. It buys these mortgage-backed securities from Freddie and also Ginnie Mae. This provides these operations with the cash infusion that enables them to buy even more mortgages, meaning banks can sell more mortgages to Freddie and Fannie, and then turn around and lend more money. The Fed's intervention into the mortgage markets, along with its interest rate cuts, keep mortgage rates far below their natural levels. In effect, it juices the mortgage market. This is a big reason we've seen more sales boom and housing prices rise as the economy emerges from the pandemic. As governments shut down the economy in the response to COVID-19, the Fed launched what some have called QE infinity. That crisis mode monetary policy remains in place to this very day. As part of its extraordinary monetary policy, the Fed buys on average $120 billion of the U.S. Treasuries on mortgage-backed security every month. Of that, central banks spend about $40 billion per month buying MBS. I should note that the Fed creates money out of thin air to buy these securities. This entire operation would be impossible were it not for the central bank's ability to monetize the debt, print money to buy debt. In effect, Freddie and Fannie can buy all the mortgages it wants, knowing that the Fed will take some of them off their hands and infuse them with more cash. The process obliterates any semblance of restraint in the mortgage market. NPR stumbled into the truth when it identified Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae's role in facilitating this takeover of mobile home parks. But they didn't go far enough. They missed the wizard behind the curtain that keeps the entire scheme afloat, the Federal Reserve. This is yet another way the Fed distorts the economy, drives misallocations of resources, transfers wealth from the poor to the rich, and generally wreaks havoc. Under the Constitution, none of these entities should even exist. The Constitution does not delegate any powers to Congress to meddle in the mortgage market, much less creates quasi-government agencies to facilitate mortgage lending. Furthermore, the central bank shouldn't even exist. We can trace the origins of this modern central bank to the creation of the first bank of the United States, even before ratification of the Bill of Rights. Even then, it was built on dubious constitutional justifications, but it wasn't created without a fight. The arguments advanced by the bank's opponents provide a great deal of insight into original understanding of the Constitution and the American system as it was conceived. You can read more about the dubious constitutional rationale for central banking here. Yeah, folks, check that out. And he's right. It's very absurd when you see a lot of these schemes are going on in front of our eyes. And they're doing this right now to the mobile parks. Who's going to be next? RV parks too. You know, it happens, folks. This is how these scumbags think. Control everything. Enslavement. It's not capitalism. It's Hamiltonianism. Alright? If you read Hamilton's Curse, he did some good things, but when it comes to the money system, whoo, that man was pretty damn heinous. You should read that book, Hamilton's Curse, written by Thomas J. DiLorenzo. Gives you a lot of good insight, and you can go further with footnotes and so forth. References. But you know what? that the Federal Reserve is illegal. We need decentralization. And it's happening little by little. Of course, you got the crypto. I'm not saying never leave all your eggs in one basket. That's going to be utilized. Of course, gold and silver. I always encourage people to make some little, get some here and there while you can. Because many of us are doing it, including myself. Always prepare. Always beware of these bastards, okay? They're nothing more than vampires. They like to control everything. And it doesn't matter what your views are. They don't care about us. And that will be it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share this throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, something that's interesting, or check out whatever you do, please send it correspondence to the Quorum. Furthermore, I'll leave the footnotes of these articles on my speaker page. And if you want to contact me via email, you can go to LokiLuck03@protonmail.com. Donate, you go to paypal.me or cash.app/LokiLuck3. If you want to support the Epoch Times, the 10th Amendment Center, donations, subscriptions, membership, do it. Always enjoy their work. Because, hey, we want to give you guys the great, knowledgeable information we can, and you could relate to others. All right, once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.